I'm Francois from Production Music Live, today with Producer Notes, and we're taking a look at the style of Stephan Bodzin Collider. We have a fully arranged track here, only using Ableton stock effects and instruments plus Serum, reverse engineering the style with different harmonies, melodies, samples from PML, and we are using Serum instead of the Moog that is being used by Stephan Bodzin, so you're able to copy it at home, and we're getting some surprisingly well-sounding results here. So let's get an arrangement overview. We have a fully arranged track lasting around 6 minutes with an intro. There will be a full playback of the entire track at the end of the video. I'm skimming through the arrangement. We are adding in hi-hats after 16 bars. And then we're adding claps. With these layered clap samples here. By the way, the entire project file is part of the Mirage MELODIC TECHNO Sound Pack. It's called Particles here, and you can find the link to the pack in the description. Then we have this little mini bridge here. Then we get into a drop extension. And then we get into a part which is kind of a bridgy part where the saw bass is being turned off. And we keep the bass stable and just focus a bit more on the plucks. And then we go into the bridge. Where we're playing around with these arp ear candy elements. And then we're going into the break where the kick is also being left out. So then we get this part where the kick is coming solo in together with the saw bass, and then we get another break. All drum elements playing in the second drop. Again, we are playing around a lot with all types of parameters on our main sound. That is the bass lead here. And then we bridge and go into an outro. And everything winds down. And let's have a quick groups overview. This is the drums group. You notice there's the kicks, but there's also some bass action and tom and kick roll action going on below the kick. We'll take a look at that in a second. This is our bass group. And when this part isn't playing, we play this part. Sorry. Make sure you're on headphones or on good speakers. There's your sub area. And in the instruments, we are playing these. So it's this synth plug arpeggio thing, a bunch of pads, a bunch of keys that are playing on top. We are going through them a bit later. And then some arps at times that provide this ear candy on top of everything. And below it we have this effects group with a bunch of crashes and lifters and a bit of noise texture. And in our send effects, we have a reverb with 6 seconds decay time. We have an echo with 3x3 feedback 50%. And we have an echo bass that is 6x6 50% ping pong. And we'll take a look at what these are doing later. And on our master, we have a bit of compression, bit of saturation and limiting. Nothing absolutely crazy going on. So before we take a look at the elements one by one, who is Stephan Bodzin? He's a German DJ and producer. Began his journey by composing for theaters and then transitioned to club music in the early 2000s. Has his international breakthrough more or less with the album Powers of 10 and a Boiler Room set where he is bringing his Moog Sub 37 onto the stage and has a custom built MIDI controller and bobs around with his head and has this unique sound live on stage. I've covered his sound in some other videos in the past. I'm linking to them in the description. Let's take a look at the drum setup now. We have a main kick sample. This kind of our 808 kick sample sound. It's a longer kick in this case. And we need the snappy part on top for the attack of the kick, and we're taking that from a different sample. So if I'm playing this in solo, that's what we're adding on top of this main sound. And all these samples are part of the project file folder as well, and also in the sample pack part of the Melodic Techno kit. And so this is getting layered together, and then you can already see there's some shenanigans going on in between the parts when the kick plays first and then it gets this tail, which is also another kick sample with a short decay. And this is the group layer, and there's another element that we call tom, which is sitting in this position here. Let's listen to all of it combined. And this is pretty typical for Stephan Bodzin's sound. It's not necessarily the first thing you come up with, but this is how you can lay a bass foundation if you use the Moog bass to sort of play your melody of the track. Because the way he's like, how do you play a bass if your bass is playing a melody? If you do these shenanigans with your bass, then you have to figure out a way to sort of still have a bass groove going without interfering too much with this main sound. So and he's solving this issue in the frequency spectrum by having a long kick and then having these little more attacky parts playing around it and giving the groove. Because if you just play the kick with that bass, it also sounds nice, but it's less groovy. And if you put in these two elements, you get the groove. It's kind of marching. So that's the positioning here. We are showing 16th notes. So we're playing kick, 1, 2, 3, 16th notes, velocities going up. We're emphasizing on the last one. Here we are on the third position. So you need sounds that are sort of attacky and snappy, and then you can still leave the stage for your main bass element that is then having this powerful descending pattern that drops into the lower notes. Okay, what do you have sitting on top? We have this clap sound. So this one is layered from 2 clap sounds. This one has a bit more texture, a bit more layer to it, and combined they really make a fat clap sound, rolling off low end here and then making sure they are really delayed. This is something that's very characteristic for the Bodzin sound claps that are, you know, delayed with a 1x1. And sometimes he might even automate this in a live set on his custom built MIDI controller, where he's bringing the dry wet up on the delays. If you ever go to a live show of Bodzin, he might transition like this into the next track. He will play this pattern and then take down the harmonic parts of track 1 or track A, move these dry wet faders up to sort of distract your attention and then bring in the new melodies of the next track. That's a good technique for an Ableton live set, which he's using to play live. And okay, on top of that, we have the cymbals group playing 16th notes essentially and varying around with the decay. So here we have 16th notes. And you see in the velocities there's nothing going on, but we have this hi-hat sample and we are controlling the decay parameter, and you can see it's being automated here over time. Just soloing this one. So super nice to play around with. This is also a parameter that can be automated in the live set. Everything that adds movement is welcome, and it's getting shifted, and then we are rolling off some low end, and we are doing the same type of movement with another sound. This one is a bit more brushy, has a bit more of a shaker type feel to it, and also gets the decay automated. And in this case, we're also throwing on a vocoder effect, setting it to noise, and then you can sort of add in more what feels like white noise by moving around with this dry wet parameter. If I'm taking this all the way out and in, you know, it acts more like a white noise. You can do this trick with all types of input sounds, and then we're moving it through an auto pan around your ears. Next element is a hi-hat swing. And this one is using a groove that accents these 16th notes. And this one is very short. It's also something that keeps you moving whenever, you know, you have a part where only the kick is playing. Because of the swing, you already have something going on. Okay, and the last element here is, that's one that we generated with Serum. So we put a noise into the noise section here, and then we are playing around with the levels. And we can even control certain parameters. Here in this case, we just have an EQ on it. But let's actually go back and take a look at where the mod wheel is located. It controls the decay parameter. And that makes sense because that's essentially the same thing we're doing here with this setup, where we are controlling that, where we have the simpler as a sampler, sample dropped in, and we're controlling the decay. And we're doing the same thing here. This is kind of our sampler. Sample has been dropped in, and again, we are controlling the envelope decay. So same setup. You can use Serum for this purpose, or you can use, you know, the sampler or the simpler in Ableton. And here's your drum setup, kind of already. These are the elements that we're using. And so we have the kicks and the foundational kick layer things. That play these attacky parts. Sixteens hi-hats, closed hi-hats for the most part, layered claps with delays. And then some EQing here that sometimes looks a bit heavy, but this is when you reverse engineer a reference track, sometimes you need to go the extra mile to make it sort of sound pretty much like the one that you're referencing to. So don't worry too much about these heavily, weirdly looking EQ curves. And now we go over to the bass group and maybe start with a part where we have the outro and we have the main bass melody not playing, but something like a foundational sub layer, which is sub bass here. And so this one is playing an octave. We are in C, we are in C minor in this whole track, and this one is playing between C2 and C3. If you're on laptop speakers, you will have a hard time listening to this one or even hearing anything, but make sure you're on headphones or on monitor speakers. And I'm combining with our kick sound. And we're really filtering out the upper parts here. Let's take a look at the automation curves. Just towards the end, we're moving it up. So that's what's being done here in this part. And then we have a second bass, which is rolling bass. And this one is just playing 16th notes, and it's sort of playing them an octave higher. Let's take a look at the sound in Serum. We are going to take a look at the other sound as well in a second. So we have saw wave, saw wave. This one is an octave higher than that one. Short envelope here, and we are sending everything through 24 decibels per octave filter. No effects going on. And what's happening with LFO1? This one is controlling the rand phase in oscillator B, and envelope 2. This one is controlling the filter cutoff. So envelope 2 shaping this plucky sound here, and the LFO1 is controlling the phase of the basic shape. So just adding in some movement in the wavetables here. And if I'm going back to the sub bass, let's take a look at this Serum patch as well. 2 triangle waves, octave down, 2 octaves down, and a sub 3 octave down, also triangle wave. Tube distortion filter. Heavy filtered here and heavily filtered here again. So we're focusing on this deep fatness. And you can see this one here has 2 voices. Processing on the group, bit of saturation. We are using different sidechain setups for the lower parts of our bass up until 200 Hertz. It's a bit more heavy here. And then for the higher parts, it's a bit more light. There's so many ways of doing this. You can also do that with multi-band compression, but this is also a way it works. On top of it, we have this Reese bass distributed over this area. We just need a little bit of width to the sound. So we have 4 voices here. We have a basic CJW wave, and we are sort of distorting the sound a little. And let's play it. Just need this Reese Atmo, and let's play it together with the kicks. So foundational bass layer, not going too low here, keeping room for the kicks, who are long as well. And then having these kick layers. And so that's the foundation whenever our bass melody is not playing. If we go into the parts where the bass melody is actually playing, let's solo it. We can see we have another one of those Reese basses. Same setup here as the Reese bass we just looked at, and this one is just more heavily sidechained, and it's playing these notes. It's from G sharp, G, F, D sharp, and C, and it lands on our root note. And there's something super powerful about descending bass lines. They kind of reach you in your skin and bones on the dance floor, and they're then landing on the root note. So on top of this wide foundation, we can now take our Moog-ish bass sound, which is more mono, you know, one voice, and play melodies on top and mess around with legato and glide. So how is the setup? We have MB saw 2 times. This one is an octave lower than that one. And we have a square wave here now, sub oscillator plus the alpha noise setup in the noise section. All of this goes through an 18 decibels per octave low pass filter, and the drive is moved up here to add crunch. EQ. This filter is not active. Let's take a look at the matrix to see the routing options. We have envelope number 2 controlling the filter cutoff. We have LFO1 slightly, ever so slightly controlling the filter cutoff. We have the mod wheel controlling the filter cutoff. We have macro 2 controlling the filter cutoff as well, and macro 1 controlling the warp setup of oscillator B. So let's mess around with that quickly. Okay, setting this back. And if we take a look at the melodies we are playing now, it's really important to have these overlaps between your notes. So G sharp here in this case. And overlap, 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 no overlap. We don't want it glide here, but we want to emphasize, we don't make it glide here, but we want to emphasize on this glide. So we keep this one playing so we can glide up and then back down into this note while also this one starts getting triggered. So these are interesting setups. I think you just have to either map a MIDI keyboard into your Ableton or play around with these notes until you have something that sounds nice. But really, one of the tricks is to, you know, walk through 3-4 different, or 2-3-4 different octaves. Okay, and that's how you sort of build your melody. You often use octave jumps. And then you can also play the fifths and the thirds and the fourths on top. Just mess around with it and see what sounds nice with the atmos you've built around it. And that's something that we'll take a look at in these other elements here. But the bass melody really sort of forces and controls the entire movement of the track because everything else is basically stable. So the bass melody is actually also changing the chords because we are keeping all these other elements very stable for the most part. For example, these plugs here, quite stable. And so our bass is the lowest element in many parts and will define what chord you're actually playing. So quickly taking a look at portamento time is being automated here and there. Cutoff is being automated over time. Quickly select this one. You can see open cutoff in the beginning of the drops and then closing down, and then again towards the next run through, you're opening it up again. And the mod wheel is also controlling the filter cutoff and sort of emphasizing on different elements. Adding in this feeling of opening it back up here. And then this FM knob down here is opening up that warp of oscillator B over time to give you the impression of a moving sound. So it just changes the character a little bit over time, so it's not stable. Let's combine it with the Reese. What else is happening in the processing? We are running it through this multi-band compressor, which emphasizes on the crunchiness. And then we're rolling off high-end information we don't need and we don't necessarily want, and we are covering with other elements like plugs and stuff. Sidechain, and then another filter to control the overall movement of the sound arrangement wise. So if we want to bring it everything down towards the end of the track, then we can just use this one here. It's easier to control for arrangement purposes. And that's basically our main bass setup here. Super nice sound. Bodzin using the Moog for this one. We can sort of try to get closer to the sound with Serum here for our household purposes. And let's move over to the instruments group where we have these square synths playing. So very noisy setup in our Serum. Alpha noise playing as well. We have a square wave and a saw wave combined. The saw wave is a bit louder and we are actually running that through a high pass. And then we have a low pass filter here in our effects section. Envelope 1 controlling the effects filter cutoff. So this one here. And the mod wheel as well. So whenever that one goes up, the filter will go up. For example, here. So simple arp pattern, but it moves towards the front. That's what makes it interesting. It never really stops with 4 bars or 2 bars or 8 bars because, you know, the starting point is moving backwards, as you can see, and that keeps it interesting. And that's where it's resetting. That's where it's resetting to start at the first position. So a bit of reverb on top of that, bit of vinyl distortion. Then we have, below that, we have this paddy verb. It's just throwing noise here. I think something's wrong with my Serum version on this setup here, but it's not that important for the sound. So I'm going to the next one. And this is a pad. It's nice. This is our pad setup. We are keeping the root note stable here and we're just moving up. And heavily filtered out in the high frequencies and low frequencies. Pad serene is the patch, and we're just using saw waves here and something crunched up, basic CJW, and through a filter. Nothing crazy going on here. and pad high on top of that, focusing on the high frequencies. Nice and bright. This one is an octave higher, 8 voices. This one is an octave lower, basic MG, 4 voices, bit of noise on top through a German low pass filter setup, and dimension expansion, bit of flanger, chorus, the whole battery of effects thrown on top of it. A lot of, you know, different types of modulations going on, but essentially this is just a bright pad sound with lots of voices. So that's what we are playing along our bass notes here, and then we are playing a bunch of keys. What are these keys doing? Let's take a quick look. That's interesting as well. So we're playing 16th notes here. It's kind of what the hats are doing up there, and now we are doing this here as well. And we have an interesting length. We're not really use the entire bar, but we break it off 3/4 of the bar already, and then we have that thing loop. So it's never really stabilizing. And it's 2 sine waves. Basically, one is an octave higher. Run through a filter. Very short decay times. And the one below it, I think, is doing the same. This one is doing the same thing. It's more detuned. Has 3 voices here. And then you notice this when it's getting filtered up, because this filter here is moving around, and in the drop parts it's more open. And you notice this better when you have the cymbals. This is a good atmospherical texture or foundation, and then we have that whole thing again lower. Basically an octave lower. You just need this as a foundation around everything to set some drama. And now we're combining that with a bit more atmo. It's one of the atmo samples that come with the sample pack, and thrown an erosion on top of it, cut the low end, and also some vocal texture. From the PML vocals pack or vocalized pack, these are vocal effects. Cleaning up, sidechaining, chorus on top, auto pan so it moves around your ears. Sidechaining again. So this is how we are setting the drama stage around everything. And now there's one more element here in the break parts. Similar pattern, we are just adding in these lower notes here, and we are opening it up in the bridge break. And let's take a look at the sound quickly. Again, square the saw, weird, or world, I don't know what this abbreviation is for. And then, you know, you make it sawy, but you still have that square element to it here. It's one voice and no effects on that one. We're just sending that through a chorus. And filtering it up. just need a bit more of the high frequencies for this part. And then you have this keys group sent through this filter, which can also be automated over time. And then the sides in this mid-side EQ setup, the sides get emphasized. And then maybe one of my favorite elements in this track is these ear candy arpeggio elements that you can find. And my absolute favorite one is this one. Damn, that sounds nice. So what's going on here? Square wave, saw wave. Nothing going on. One voice, one voice. We are going through the MG low 12 decibels per octave filter, controlling the cutoff, plucky sound, and then we are using the arpeggiator and messing around with the rate. Up and down, and you just throw in the chord. What a nice sound. C and the fifth on top. And then we're throwing in G sharp and D sharp. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Chorus ensemble, bit of reverb, long decay time, bit of delay, ping pong mode, and another delay with 8 notes. And then we are gluing it all together so we can really emphasize on those delay tails, and then we're ducking it with the sidechain here, and then we're cleaning up the low ends, and then a bit of auto filter on top so it's not sitting too bright. I could listen to this all day. Some of my favorite ear candy here. Anyways, let's move over quickly. Looking at the effects section, we have this texture noise. Just a noise sample. You have an uplifter sample, downlifter, and crash. And that's the effects section already. And then we have our send and return setup here. And these, which is kind of special, go through an extra group here that sidechains the send effects, and then it's getting sent into the master. So that's a cleaning up setup. So quick summary, the classic Bodzin sound has lots of atmos, keys, and arps as a foundational layer. And they remain fairly stable and provide this bedding for your bass to play a melody and move around. And he's using the Moog to play these mono bass notes that have glide, portamento going on and moving down, and usually they are trying to be a descending bass line and then land super powerful on some root note that reaches you in your skin and bones and is just massively powerful on a dance floor. And many different elements get automated here. You play around with the decay times, with the cutoff, with portamento times. And in your cymbals and hi-hat setups, you play around heavily with 16th notes and decay times of your hi-hats as well. Then you have this super nice ear candy with your arpeggios. This one is also pretty signature. Sounds cinematic, classical, you know, composer for theater. That's how he started, and you notice it. Very nice ear candy. And then you have these main plugs that are automated as well. Usually noisy when opened up. And they are adding drama. Just, you know, just a semitone change here provides the drama. And a bit of distortion on top of it as well. And then we are filling out our frequency range with these keys. It's a very typical also techno arp pattern for hypnotic techno tracks. And then for our bass groove, I forgot to mention that before, it's important, since we are playing these melodic basses, we need something that sort of grooves in our bass or helps the perception of a groovy bass. Because you have this long kick setup and then you need a bit of attacky tom and kick rolls to give the impression of a groove. Something marching. Because the bass is sustained and melodic. Okay, so that's the setup. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough. Feel free to check out the links in the description for other Bodzin videos I've done in the past for the Mirage Melodic Techno Pack that includes this project file here. You can chop it up and use parts of that in your own tracks and maybe copy over Serum patches or samples or something, or setups for the drums. Also take a look at the start to finish course for Melodic Techno, a Moog Sub 37 course and presets, music theory for Melodic Techno in-house, and if you want it all, go get the Everything Bundle Collector's Edition from PML. It's the craziest deal we have available. Thank you for your time and attention. I'll talk to you again soon, and now let's have a full playthrough.